We're letting folks in and we'll get started shortly. Hold on. All right. Welcome back, everyone. On this Tuesday, April 11th, we will be covering strategic planning. It's good to see faces out there of folks joining us from all over the state. I wanted to welcome also our interpreters from Sensole. We've got Arusi and Pablo who will be joining us. Please take the time to update your name on your Zoom screen to include your preferred language. You can do EN for English, SP for Spanish, or BI for bilingual. That'll help us greatly when we're setting up breakout rooms. And be sure to go ahead and go down to the bottom where you see the globe and choose your language preference in the interpretation. And we are ready to go. We're recording and I'll pass it off to you. Lisa?
Yes, hi, good morning, everyone, and hope you all had a great weekend. Looks like we're going to have a great weather here in North Carolina this week. So I hope you guys have gotten your coffee as usual, got some brain food with you. As we begin, as we have begun always, we're starting off with strategic planning today. This is our fourth session, so 2 more to go after this one. So we thank you for being here. We want to take a quick moment, Jean, if you wouldn't mind, just to thank our sponsors really quickly.
Sure. Great. Thank you. Welcome again, everyone. And again, just really appreciate all of you who make the time to do the things that will help you and your organization grow and sustain. For our partners and sponsors, again, we'd just like to say thank you to Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation, the Guilford Nonprofit Consortium, CARI, Live Inspired, and Duke's Continuing Studies Program.
Thank you, Jean. So for today, look at that agenda. But really, it's going to be great. You know, I know it looks so overwhelming at the moment, but strategic planning, as you can imagine, has a lot of moving parts within it. Dr. Palmer would graciously take us through it eloquently, as she has always. So we'll go through our introduction as we've done, have an icebreaker. We'll go into our strategic planning, then a closing. But we'd like for you just to ask, as you note on the screen, if your strategic plan is available on your website and it's posted there, could you please send a link in the chat so we can share it? Because we'd like to ask for volunteers at some point to be able to share their strategic plan a little later on during our icebreaker. So this would cue us up a little bit. So if it's there, please share it in the link in the chat so we can go to it and bring it up when we're ready to share it. Okay, so thank you for that. So you can be thinking about it as we continue. Next slide, please. Rebecca.
Wow, that was quick. We went through that agenda fast.
I know.
Thank you. Thanks. So we wanted to kick off doing a quick breakout. We'll spend about 10 minutes in breakout, and what we'd like for you all to do is to imagine that your breakout group is alone in a dark cabin, similar to the one you see on the screen, and all you have is one match. Which of the following would you light first? An oil lamp, a fireplace, or a candle? You cannot say the match. The match is not an answer. We're giving you one to say that you will light the match first, but what will be the first of those 3 options that you'll light first? The oil lamp, the fireplace, or the candle? You all need to gather in your groups, reach consensus, and come back, and we'll have you all share what you all decided as a group. So let's see here. I'm gonna give you guys each a room here. Let me add a room. I was still setting up your rooms.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I'm almost done here. I think.
And maybe
I
while
got-
you're doing that, are there any questions
Oh, yeah, good.
after, while Rebecca's finishing setting up the rooms, understanding what your assignment is? And if you do have a question, just come off mute and ask.
Mhm.
Okay, great. I guess you did a great job that
Nice.
quick there.
Good. Okay, good. Just remember the match is not an answer. If you come back and say we were going to light the match first, that's a given.
Mhm.
So it's going to be the oil lamp, the fireplace, or the candle. And I'll go ahead and open up the rooms, and we'll be back in about 10 minutes. So maybe 9:45. And we'll see you back
Rebecca,
here. Yeah.
Rebecca, real quick, does everyone
Yeah.
need to be reminded to switch their interpretation to English? Or does that automatically happen?
Oh, you mean down below?
Uh-huh.
Yep. Make sure that you've got your language selection down below. If it's English, you should see an EN down there. And when you come back from breakout, you'll have to reselect which language you'd like. So we'll go ahead and open up rooms, and we'll see you back here in about 10 minutes.
Hey, Rebecca, real quick.
Yes.
For context, is this like the being in a dark cabin? Are we supposed to be looking to do something next? I mean, because I think that determines which one of these we choose. Is it cold outside? Are we trying to figure out how to get out of there, get out the woods? I mean, or is this literally just about the dark cabin?
It's about being in the dark and needing to have light.
Okay.
Yep. So you can see
Thank you.
everything else. Yep. Good question. Good question. All right. And if you're still in the main room and you need to be placed in a breakout, let me know. Just raise your hand.
You know, I do this every week. Your coffee or tea or whatever beverage it is that gets you going and gets you started in the morning. I do want to just kind of start off. We have a team. You don't have to go to the next slide yet, but I do want to just kind of start off with just getting a sense. And I think I can see with this view, I think I can see most of us. So we jumped right in this morning, right? And got going with this icebreaker and sending and putting everybody in the dark. Before we get into just kind of hearing some feedback from each of you, what did it feel like just kind of jumping right into this icebreaker? And you can use your emoji if you like, or you can unmute yourself. So what did it feel? I see, look at, is it, I don't want to mispronounce names. Is it Marlise?
Marlise.
Marlise, okay. Give me some sense of, kind of where you are or where you were now that you about 10 minutes in to kind of just jumping right in here and saying, oh, and by the way, now you're alone in a dark cabin and you got to figure out how to get yourself out of it. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. So our task is that we're alone in a cabin and all we have in the mat is a match. And what is it that which of the following items you would like first? An oil lamp, the fireplace, or a candle? And so if we could just kind of get some idea as to as it relates to our first bullet, to kind of give us a report back on your group's consensus on which you would like first.
Dr. Palmer, I want us to pick on Andre because he put a good comment after his question. Then he put a good comment in here. So Andre, why don't you give us some feedback from your group now that you get what we were doing here? I'm gonna pick on you this morning.
Y'all think y'all slick, huh? I see what you did there. Okay. I'm over here asking for context and then realizing, oh, this is intentionally without context. We had a seasoned veteran when it came to camping in our group who made a very good point about lighting the candle first, and the candle you can then use to light everything else. assuming it was a stick candle, which the assumption was right. So that was our consensus as a group, was to light the candle first and then use it to light. Now you had a group of, I don't know if y'all did this intentionally, but you put a whole bunch of people that don't do camping in the same group. And then we had one person who did do camping and gave us a good idea. But yeah, so that's what our consensus was.
Great.
Same for group two, same thing, Andre. We were like, look, we were back and forth between two. And then we thought, we got to get this source of that's going to quickly light up everything else. And so we had a little bit of brainstorming though out loud and just kind of process. But yeah, we landed with the candle as well. And we didn't know how long it would take us to light the fireplace if one match would cut it. So that's kind of what finally helped us land with the candle.
Thank you.
Yeah, I quickly learned I will not be leading anybody in the wilderness, because I thought I was going to light a fireplace with one match.
Yeah, so that's actually what our team decided we would do, and I did not know that that's not possible. So maybe we are all dying together in that cabin, but we were gonna light the fireplace because we figured if we're in the woods, then we'd be able to search for wood to keep it going long term, and we could probably stick a candle in there and light it and get the oil lamp lit, and still be able to have all three, and then have sort of a sustainable source of heat and light. But yeah, I did not know you can't light a fireplace with a match. So that's interesting.
My group, we were gonna light the candle first. And I, of course, am like, well, we don't even know if it's summertime. Why would you have a fireplace going? Why would you have this happening? But then they chose the oil lamp. We ended up choosing the oil lamp because, you know, what if there's a draft and the candle goes out? And so the oil lamp could be lit. You could use that to light the candle, thus the fireplace, I guess. I mean, is it a gas fireplace? We don't know. But we all decided that probably you couldn't go wrong either way, as long as there was direction.
Okay. Our group chose to light the candle. We were kind of split. We had two that wanted to light the fireplace first, one that wanted to light the lamp, but three of us pretty much wanted to light the candle first. And we came to consensus on that because you could use the candle if you needed to light the fireplace or you needed to light the lamp.
Well, I think I'm gonna go with my group. In our group, we didn't have a consensus. So half was for the candle and the other two for the oil lamp. And so the reason why, and I was one of for the oil lamp who started that idea, because as Summer, I think, said, I feel like with one match, you are more likely to be able to light up an oil because of how good. So because it's easy to do it, and it's less likely that it's gonna turn off. So the candle is more risky to keep it on. And the other half of the group stayed with the candle. They thought that with the candle they will be able to fire up the rest of this, the oil lamp and the fireplace. So no consensus at the end.
Okay.
So that relates a lot to the strategic planning. There is not always consensus.
All right. Is that all the groups?
Getting back to Andre's comment, I was just going to say, just getting back to Andre's comment, it just goes to show you how important context is.
Mm-hmm. Any other comments? What was the actual process? Well, I think you all kind of gave that in your summaries. So if it's okay, I'm going to go to the third bullet point. how does this relate to the topic of strategic planning? And if we could team back up to the agenda slide, which is number 5. So the question is, how does this relate to strategic planning? And here is our focal points or touch points for strategic planning today. We have quite a bit to get through, but we have a workbook full of information to kind of help guide us as we did with the other topics. And so as you're thinking about a response to the question, we're going to look at what it takes to get started with the whole strategic planning process, preparing to plan, because there's that preliminary work that needs to be done before we actually get into the process of strategic planning, thinking about needs assessments and the relevance of needs assessments, asset mapping, and how that can be helpful, recognizing that mission and visions can be adjusted or edited during the strategic planning process, identifying what those primary goals are and the objectives. Most of us who facilitate strategic planning will engage our nonprofit leadership in a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats process of just determining just kind of where we're strong, where we're weak, et cetera. Then there's the actual mechanics of writing the plan. And of course, implementing the plan, monitoring and tracking progress, and then evaluation and revision. And so our question is, how does this icebreaker, how does this relate to the topic of strategic planning? And you can unmute yourself or you can use the chat. No takers?
I'll say something. I think in our group, it was very interesting that, you know, we wanted to hear everyone's point of view and everyone's opinion. I think that's an important part of strategic planning, is hearing all the voices in the room.
Absolutely. And quite often in the strategic planning process, that takes the longest amount of time. So if you're trying to complete a strategic plan within a certain time frame, what's going to impact your ability to do that is how much feedback do you need and from who. And so if you are wanting to get feedback from your community, for example, then that's going to take time for you to do that. And then the methodology, are you interviewing, are you surveying, and so on and so forth. And we'll get into the weeds on that, but I just wanted to make that comment. Engagement from the community and your key stakeholders is important, but it also takes up quite a bit of time in the time frame of completing the process. Team, I see some responses in the chat.
I can share. The concept, Marley said the concept of being able to offer up different points of view and sort of build a successful plan through consensus. Kim said you got to think through what you want to accomplish and figure out the best way to get there. Marley said it's definitely not a rushed job, LOL. And Paula said team participation. Andre said, without context, feedback, organization, context, etc., there is no plan. Without a plan, there's no direction. Without direction, there's no progress. Without progress, stagnation takes hold, and insert doom and gloom.
And if I could, I know you've got a couple more, Rebecca, but I want to make a comment about the context piece. The approach that we suggest to gain context is threefold. One is assess the capacity of your nonprofit, because depending upon the capacity of your nonprofit, it has a lot to do with what type of plan, what's going to be in the plan, and what kind of goals or what goals you're going to be able to identify. So for example, if our goal is to raise more money and within our nonprofit organizational entity, we don't have minimally a person in place to do that, then that's going to be very, very difficult. So organizational capacity in terms of context, doing a needs assessment or gathering information from needs assessments that have been completed related to your service area for your nonprofit, and then the asset mapping piece. All of those three tasks, I'll just say, or activities, helps us to understand context. One of the things that I'm very adamant about when I assist nonprofits with facilitating the strategic planning process is the capacity assessment of that nonprofit. So something very similar to what we did at the beginning of this institute is just as important when you're beginning to do or think about strategic planning, because you want to make sure minimally your staff and or your board of directors understands where you are currently. Now, in your plan, you may be focusing on building your capacity. That may very well be a goal, but our goals are highly contingent on the capacity of our nonprofit to deliver. So that's important. Go ahead, Rebecca. I just wanted to make that comment.
No, that's good. Thank you. This one I really feel like is key, especially in this day and age. The Maya said the risk assessment of each choice that you make. And I was hearing that in a lot of you thinking about, well, if we light the candle and it blows out,
yeah,
we're up a creek. What are we going to do at that point? So, and a lot of us, as we're approaching EDI, for instance, that's come up as well. People talking about, how firmly you plant your feet on that hill could mean that you lose funders. There are some, how risk averse is your nonprofit, and how set up are you to be able to bounce back and to be able to have the resources to continue on with choices that you're making as an organization.
Okay.
Yep, strategic planning, at least a viable one, takes time, talent, and treasure, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And is it AO Wilson?
IO,
thank you. You've got stakeholders, resources, and a goal. How you put these elements together to create a plan that can be managed. Yep. Yeah, is it feasible? Is it manageable? Who's going to oversee it? Who's going to make sure we get to our endpoint? And I think that's all we got up there. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And it might be a good idea, since we have quite a list and quite a list of touch points here. You might want to take a quick picture of the list, and then that way you can kind of refer to it as we're moving through our information. If you're trying to keep up, that might be a good way to do that. Also, if we, just a reminder, a couple of you, if your strategic plan is available on your website, if you could share your link in the chat, and we're going to refer to those or pull those up later as we get into the content of our topic today. And then also keep in mind, as you're looking at this list, to make a note of, where is it that you have questions, or maybe there is already, as you look at this list, you see where there's some items that you don't quite understand. And again, for every item on this list, we have information in your workbook to kind of help guide and coach you. I'm referring to, you see me leaning over, I'm getting my report back from our results and findings from our group on strategic planning, in terms of what we said we wanted to work on over the next year. And the first item was to implement action plan to guide our day-to-day operations, and all of the items under Thrive, and then establishing a schedule for annual review of the plan to assess goal achievement, accomplishments, and challenges. So I'm going to be referring back to that as well. And again, I was referring to the capacity assessment that we were taking a look at. Okay, we can go on to slide 9, I believe, or is it? Yeah, we can go back to that. As we're moving along and jumping right into our topic. So here is where we wanted to highlight a few examples of the strategic plan. So if you could go back to 11, slide 11. So we wanted to ask some of you if you have your strategic plans online, if you would have shared your link in the chat. Do we have any? If we want to pull up one of those.
I don't think I see any
You don't see
that
any?
were shared in the chat, but feel free to raise your hand if you have one that you'd like to share on the spot. I know we are kind of putting you on the spot a little bit. And the center has ours that we can pull up to share as well. I've got it ready to share if we're ready for that, but we'll give it a moment.
I think oh, Rebecca, you shared something in the chat. Oh, that was from the center. Okay, I thought that was from something else.
How about, let me just do a quick, if you could just use maybe your thumbs up feature. How many of you have a strategic plan for your nonprofit that is active right now? That is active right now. Just use your reaction feature. I see 1. Just trying to gauge. I see 2.
Just see about 2.
3. I think I see maybe
That's about it. 1,
3.
3.
So is it safe to say that as a whole, out of about 30, I see some items in the chat too. What is it, 30, 35? Maybe nonprofits represented. We have what, maybe 5 that may have strategic plans. One of the places to put your strategic plan is on your website. And you can post it there as a PDF, and then, then no one can per se download it and manipulate it or anything like that. But oftentimes nonprofits, we will put our strategic plans on our website. It gives folks a glimpse into kind of where we are and what it is that we are anticipating in the future. And I see one message here in the chat is that they're required to have one. There are some funding sources and opportunities that do require us to have a strategic plan in place. So that is definitely true. We can go ahead and share the centers, the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits.
I think Andre was saying that he has one. He's happy to share that. It's an old one, he says. He did for a previous org, but at least I think it gives us a framework.
Yep.
If you don't mind, Andre, that'd be great. I think he put the link in the chat. Yep, he did. So maybe Leslie can open that up and share it. Nice. Is everyone, are we opening it up to share, or would you like us to do it individually? Oh, there it is. Okay, sorry. There it is, Dr. Palmer, it's up.
So I'm going to let Andre just kind of give us, I don't know, like a 2-minute, 3-minute just overview of what we're looking at.
That's what I get. All right, so I apologize, y'all. I've got really bad allergies. So just if I mute myself to cough, ignore me. So my before I moved to North Carolina, I worked for the YMCA in 4 different states across the country. So my most recent role at the Y, when I was in in Central New York, part of my job was to do a strategic plan. So that's what you're looking at here. It's a strategic plan for the YMCA of Central New York. And actually, part of the strategic plan was actually changing our name. We were the YMCA of Greater Syracuse, but we served a whole lot more than Syracuse, New York. So part of that was me helping us get our name changed first, and then we did a strategic plan to reflect that under the new name. It looks like since I left, nope, that's a lie. There might have been some updating done to this, but it looks pretty much the same and just has the word update here. So that tells me that they did some updating after I left, because this strategic plan was originally done pre-COVID.
If I could comment there, so one approach, as Andre mentioned here, to editing or doing the next strategic plan is that you can use the one you have and do what we call an update to it. And what that might do is it might reduce the amount of time that it might take in a traditional strategic planning process. And then the other thing too, it might help you with cost. So if you already have a plan in place, it may be a good springboard, for you to ensure that you have a plan that is active. Sometimes folks will delay it because maybe they don't have the funds, or maybe time just got away. But you can use that approach and do an update. Okay, Andre, you can go ahead. And team, if you can scroll on through so he can kind of, yeah.
So I guess what would you want me to talk about? The process, how we got here?
Yes, and then the team is just going to kind of scroll through so people can just kind of see what you have.
Gotcha. Okay. This was a couple of years ago. But the process that we went through, which is the one I go through every time we do strategic planning, is first and foremost, do we want to do one, right? And getting people to see that this is not just about writing a 2-page paper that sits on somebody's shelf. The reason it's termed a strategy roadmap is because that's what it is. It's a roadmap to get us from where we are today to where we want to be, asking a lot of questions, pulling together a group of volunteers and staff that serve as the strategy team, or some people call it the strategic planning committee. And also, I believe that if you work for the organization, there are times that you are better, you serve the process better as a participant. So bringing in somebody who can facilitate objectively is a big part of this. So build a strategy team, bring in an outside facilitator who is really good at understanding what people care about. And then part of this was also so before we even got to the plan, build the team, build out what some of the goals are, and then and then come up with a list. So the strategy team came up with a list. So if you scroll all the way back to the top, you will see the big questions that we're looking. Where is it? Yep. So the big questions that you always want to be asking, right? These are the questions that we're asking. So the strategy team came up with these questions, and then it was refined through 2 different community leader input sessions. And each one of those input sessions had about 110 people. And you're talking from, the mayor to other community agencies to the police department. So we brought in a bunch of people, together to answer, to ask these questions, facilitated by the consultant that we brought in, who worked for the YMCA's national office. Anyway, so you go through the big questions, you do the community leader input sessions, and then that's when the writing of the plan over the course of, I think it probably took us a good 3 months after the community leader input sessions and a number of stakeholder stakeholder interviews, individual interviews with people. So you did big groups, you did small groups, you did individuals, and all that did was, we had pages of notes that a couple of people then took the time to summarize, and that's how we landed on figuring out what the categories are. So the priority areas. Actually, if you can scroll, I don't remember what we called the priority area. Oh, strategic priority 1. Okay. So we had, I want to say 6 or 7 strategic priorities. And then once you lay out the strategic priorities, you figure out what the big picture organizational strategies are that feed that priority, and then having measurable outcomes. And then what you see, and then what we did was we had 2 separate versions of this. The one that is external, so it's less nuts and bolts, but you still see the priorities, the strategies, and then the measurable outcomes. And then the internal version had even more detail, and then a document, basically a fancy spreadsheet. It's still an Excel spreadsheet because you can't beat Excel on some things still. So the Excel spreadsheet is where we tracked. So you basically took all the priority, the strategies, and the measurable outcomes, loaded them into a tracking spreadsheet that we use, and shared it with all different leaders that we had across our branches and things like that. And each branch had a responsibility to feed that tracking document. And then the strategic planning committee, or the strategy team, stayed in place for another 18 months to help continue to track this.
And if you could go to the end of it, team, I was trying to get a complete number of the strategic priorities. So thank you for sharing, and thank you for sharing on the spot like that. But here's the thing, strategic plans are, and Andre, you can chime in at any point as well as I'm sharing. There may be something that comes to mind for you in terms of what you all did, just so that our colleagues have this as a point of reference as we're going through our work. We always incorporate this way in the strategic planning session, so that we have an actual plan from one of the participants in the group that we are actually taking a look at. And as well as noticing, I'm noticing, or the team noticed, that out of what, maybe 30 nonprofits potentially in this institute, there was about 5 or 6 that actually have a plan that is active. So that kind of tells us, or that gives us an idea as to kind of we want to focus on to try to identify why that might be the case. Strategic planning, I think someone put it in the chat, it's not something that happens quickly. And even when we scheduled them to be completed in about 6 months or so, oftentimes it takes a little longer, because we don't know how long it's going to take, in particular when you're trying to get the feedback. Andre mentioned that they did interviews, they sound like they did focus groups, they did community meetings, they did a whole lot of gathering of information from various entities that might connect or be in alignment with this plan. And so that takes time. You got to get on people's schedules. And if you're trying to include elected officials, their schedules are very, very busy. And oftentimes it's difficult to kind of land them on a date early on. So that's important to keep in mind. Another thing, this idea of having a strategic planning committee, I think that is wise, that if you're going to do this, to have 2 or 3, not more than maybe 5 or 6 individuals that are actually going to help shepherd this process. And that would include the executive director or president and CEO, and then of course, your board members. But it is important to have that. Some nonprofits are not fortunate enough to be able to have that. And so we have to work with whatever it is, whatever your capacity is, right, to be able to engage. And then also the cost of it. They used here an external facilitator, that cost. And so you have to kind of think about that. But we're going to get into all of these details. But we just wanted you to see an example. One thing I'll say that got my attention with this.
Dr. Palmer, just real quick, I wanted to chime in because sometimes when you talk, so I've done 2 of these for 2, so the one with the Y, that was a mid-major organization, $25 million organization. Actually, the consultant that we brought in did not necessarily cost us anything because he was with our national office and we pay national dues. And then I did one for a much smaller organization 2 years ago that I did bring in a consultant, and that consultant cost me like $3,500, right? So I wanted to make sure that it was, because I know there are different sides of organizations in this cohort, that it's not, and I didn't have a strategy team when I did this last one, right? It was basically me and the consultant, but we still did the full process of stakeholder input session, in individual stakeholder interviews, and then he and I came together, analyzed the results of the survey and the interviews, and then put it together. I took it back to the executive committee, right? So there are different ways of doing this depending on the size of the organization, and it doesn't have to be daunting. It's a huge lift, but it doesn't have to be daunting. And I know that's not what you were implying, but.
But what I will say though, is that you had done one before when you helped with the second one. So oftentimes our executive directors don't have that skill set. And so we'll get into that. We'll get into that, but oftentimes they don't have that skill set to be able to support the facilitator in the ways that would otherwise cost money. So I just want to make sure that we understand that a part of our doing the fundamentals, right, of strategic planning in this institute is to help you to be able to do what Andre did with that second nonprofit, is to help you to be able to interface with, if you're not facilitating it yourself, to be able to interface with a consultant if you decide to go that route. But we'll get into the weeds on that. It's very helpful when the executive director or the president and CEO has a working knowledge of how this works. But that's any of what we're training on. That's financial management, that's fundraising, that any of those topics, that's human resources, personnel administration. If you have some of those skill set that you can lend to some of those management functions, it helps with lifting all of that up. So I think that's an important point to make as you're describing the difference between the first one and the second one. We don't want you all to be in the dark, right? As to how this works. We want you we want to lay that out for you. Okay, let's move into, we can go ahead to the slide 12. And I think we probably are coming up on a break, team, just to kind of, as we transition into our content. So again, I highlighted a few minutes ago those areas that we identified in our capacity assessment as to what it is that we wanted to work on as it related to strategic planning. And this is where we landed. The emphasis from the capacity assessment landed on these areas. And so as I'm working through each of these, I am going to put a lot of emphasis on the goal setting and objectives, the SWOT analysis, actually writing the plan, implementing the plan, and then the evaluation and revision. And Andre, at the very end of his sharing, talked about how they monitored and tracked their the implementation of the plan by using, I think you said Excel, kind of putting that information into a space that could be shared and that people that are involved could actually keep up. So this is kind of where we're going to kind of focus in terms of priority. We're going to walk through all of these, but we're going to focus on that. The other thing I want to mention too is equity, diversity, and inclusion. As you are contemplating how you're going to approach doing strategic planning, we encourage you to incorporate equity, diversity, and inclusion, either in terms of looking at your mission and vision, maybe identifying some core principles and values that you might want to include as you're carving out what your goals are going to be in your plan. We highly encourage a focus on equity, diversity, and inclusion. And so this is kind of where we landed, as I said before. In your, we're going to take a break here in just a minute, but I want to just I want to tee up our work before we go into a break. In your workbook on page 57, it's in English on page 57, Spanish on page 58, and we're going to go right through these next 5 pages, 57 and 58, and then 58 in English and 59 in Spanish, and page 60 English, 61 Spanish, page 61 English, page 62 Spanish, and then page 62 English and 63 Spanish. So for English it's 57, 58, 60, 61, 62. And then for Spanish is 58, 59, 61, 62, 63. So we're gonna focus on these particular handouts for in terms of looking at startup, which was that very first item in our strategic planning list and touch points. As I mentioned before, it is important to think about really and truly what process you're going to use, if you're going to use a committee, and what choices you have. And I'm going to, as I mentioned before, I'm going to refer back to Andre's description of what happened with the YMCA's strategic plan that he shared. And I was taking notes as he was going through, so I can kind of insert some of that. And team, I may even have you go back to that plan to point out some things as we go through. But so we have a definition for you, and we've been talking about it in terms of it is a process. And oftentimes strategic planning has about 10 to 12 steps. It doesn't matter if it's a small nonprofit or a large nonprofit. Doesn't matter if your budget is no budget to millions of dollars of a budget. The process itself looks very similar in terms of what we do. Now, how we do each part is customized for each and every nonprofit, but the what is very much similar. And we try to customize, like I said, what we do based on what the nonprofit's desire is or what it is they're trying to accomplish. So that's important to remember. And real quick on page 58, you have a list of truths or myths about strategic planning. And I'm going to let you take about 2 minutes to kind of read through these and identify whether or not you think this is a truth or a myth about strategic planning, whether or not you think this is a truth or a myth about strategic planning. Whether you think this is a truth or a myth about strategic planning. And again, we're getting teed up to go to kind of get into the weeds of what's involved. It's very easy, or I shouldn't say very easy. It's a little easier to talk about the what, which is all this stuff, right? Content that we have in the workbook. But it's the how that is the game changer. Like, how are you going to actually go about doing this? So we're going to take a look at the answers to the worksheet. So the first item is strategic planning is systematic in that it calls for following a process that is both structured and data-based. What do I see? I see some chat responses. Thank you.
True.
Absolutely, this is true. The note you want to make about data-based, refer to your needs assessment, results and findings, and refer to your asset mapping, results and findings, as well as the feedback that you gather from key stakeholder individuals and also groups and other entities in your community. So it is a process and it is structured to kind of get you to that ultimate plan. Number 2, strategic planning is a substitute for the exercise of judgment by leadership. It is definitely a myth, and I see the responses. Here's what we don't want to do. And executive directors, I'm going to kind of pick on you a little bit. Executive directors and presidents and CEOs. Yes, the strategic plan is intended to guide the organization over a period of time, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. It is definitely for that, but it is not a substitute for leadership. The plan on paper doesn't lead the organization. If we are fortunate to have an executive director, president, and CEO in place, it's very important for that individual to be a part of guiding. And here's a part in the beginning that's important as well. As the executive director, the president, and CEO, we don't want to force doing a strategic plan. You may have to do a little bit of tilling the soil, as I call it, to kind of get everybody on board that this is something that we should and need to do. And so the spirit in which you do it is very, very important. Now, I say that, but there are instances where the strategic plan is mandated. And so we have to do it. And but you want to try to lead the group or lead your organization into the process. Number 3, strategic planning is a smooth, predictable, linear process. That is definitely a myth. Number 4, strategic planning guides the acquisition and allocation of resources. It can be very helpful in doing that. And so that is very, very, very true. The strategic planning process is about building commitment. The strategic planning process is about building commitment. The exercise in and of itself over those 10 steps often fosters quite a bit of cohesion, and that's what we're hoping for, and also helps us to kind of get that commitment and buy-in from different stakeholders. Number 6, strategic planning predicts the future. Let's see what kind of response we get from that one. It's not a crystal ball, but it can definitely help us to begin to think about the future. And that is a myth, but it can help us think about the future, plan for the future. The plan in and of itself, though, doesn't make predictions. It's what we put into it is what we're actually going to get from that. And then strategic planning involves choosing priorities. And we saw in Andre's example that literally they used that language. They called it strategic priorities, and they had 8 of those in the plan. So this is, again, just a real quick, just kind of get us grounded as we're trying to move through this process. I want to go ahead over to page 60. We've talked about all of this already. We shared this on the agenda as well in terms of the process, and we're going to hone in on some of these. On page 61, we've been talking about a committee or a team that you might pull together in order to move the process along. So we've got some examples here of individuals that might serve on that committee. And then page 62 is very, very important. I say this is one of my favorite
Favorite
handouts.
slides.
I always say that. But this is one of my favorite,
Very
Lisa. Favorite. Strategic planning choices. We've been talking about all of these choices the past 15 minutes. This is really what we've been talking about. So if you're thinking about engaging in the strategic planning process, you want to begin to think about, will internal and external stakeholders be involved? And if they are going to be, how are they going to be involved, or how would you like for them to be involved? How much time do you have to have the plan completed? Oftentimes when we get inquiries from nonprofits about doing a strategic plan, can you do it in 3 months? That's probably not long enough. We can do plans in about 6 months, depending upon how large the organization is. And again, how much feedback and involvement do you want from external stakeholders? That is key, because you're going to be competing with their schedules and their timelines of things. And sometimes that makes it a little longer. Are you going to have a committee or task force? I highly encourage that if you can. Who's going to be on the committee? You have to kind of make a decision about that. Who's going to lead the process? The executive director, president, and CEO should be involved, and your board chair should definitely be involved in that. Who's going to write the plan? So literally, who's going to put the ink on the page in terms of this plan? You can decide how you want to do that. You can save costs sometimes here if you have an individual within your organization, within your nonprofit, that can actually help mechanically build the plan. That can save you. And you know, strategic planning facilitators and consultants oftentimes will embrace that. So that is a way that you might be able to cut some costs. Will we have a retreat? Most strategic planning processes has at least one, maybe more. And then will you hire an outside consultant to facilitate the process? So that these are all choices that you should be thinking about as it relates to kind of getting started with strategic planning. So again, this is startup, and I know we haven't even jumped into the meat and potatoes yet, but this is kind of the way you should begin to think about it. Team, we're going to take a break here. It is 10:36, and I was trying to get us at break time at 10:30, but it's 10:36, and so we're going to take a break here. And we will report back. I'm sorry, I didn't give a time to report back. Let's report back at 10:45. That gives you some time to regroup, get a snack, and so on, check emails and all that stuff that we have to do while we are in a workshop, right? Transition back. And we're going to pick up on page 63. So in your workbook, we're going to cover about 4 or 5 topics here, and then we're gonna go into a breakout. So as you're returning back, just to make sure you're kind of in lockstep with us. So you'll be ready for the breakout work. Did anybody get a chance to do something mindless to go out? Anybody go outside? And it's sun shining out my window over here to the left. So I can see sunshine. Saturday, it rained all day. Of course, I'm in Guilford County. So it rained all day Saturday, and then we had some sunshine yesterday and today. Sunday was sunshine too, but it wasn't warm, it was cold. Who fed baby lambs?
That's Carla at Working Landscapes. Yeah.
Oh, Carla. Okay.
Yeah, we've had a big time with sheep and lambs this spring. So there are 2 babies that need to be fed.
Wow. How special.
Yeah.
Any other mindless activities taking place on your break? How many people sent 20 emails, responded to 3 text messages, talked with someone out in the office there, and then got back on, and then remembered you hadn't really taken a break? Because that is exactly how it happens sometimes. Okay, welcome back. We're going to jump right into the next part of our work. So startup is where we left off. Now we're going to begin to think about preparing to plan. Preparing to plan. That's what happens when you get into your emails, go into your emails, Morgan. It'll pull you in before you know it. But that's what we do, right? That's our reality. That is our reality. So preparing to plan. If we could go to our slide real quick. And it's slide 14. So here's what we're going to focus on here. Why plan? Is your organization ready to plan? Involvement and commitment. Who should be involved? Useful documents, choices and decisions we need to make. And the work plan, I think I'm going to save until after. I think I'm going to save that until after after you come out of the breakout, maybe, because I've got. Let me just check your workbook real quick. Oh, okay. We'll do that. So we'll actually go from page 63 to page 67 before we go into our breakout. And then we will come back and jump right back into our the rest of our material. So in thinking about oh, in Spanish, sorry, English is page 63 to 67. And this handouts or in your workbook, we're referring to page 64 to 68 in Spanish. So just want to make sure you have that. So it is important to, and Andre mentioned this, I think, when he was sharing with us, it is important to have a sense of why you're actually doing the plan. And in their plan, they had what you call big questions. And so that really, those questions that they're trying to answer is a really good foundation to begin thinking about your prep, right? Or something good to do in your preparation is why is it that we're going about doing this plan? All the different reasons. And what questions are you trying to answer as a result of that? We also have something that you could use with your board and with your staff. This really little quick pop quiz. Are we ready to plan? You know, is our nonprofit ready to plan? And thinking about the items that we have here, we want to give ourselves a 1 on all of these, or close to all of them, if we are thinking about going into strategic planning and being ready to plan. So that's a tool you can use. And then on page 64 is the score sheet. So you can kind of see how you might rate. But this is something that you can do with your organization. Now, page 65 and page, I'm connecting the dots here. Page 65 and page is one of the pages that we looked at before you went to break. Page 65 and page 62 complement each other. Those two worksheets complement. So who should be involved? And when you look at the very first item there, will external and or internal stakeholders be involved? And so we've given you just kind of a little punch list here of individuals that should or could be involved in the process. And we've talked about these. The clients and others at the very bottom, again, we're on page 65 in English, and you all have to help me in Spanish. I think it's 66 maybe. But in terms of the items that reads clients and others. So here is where, what you could make a note, here is where your time starts to, it could impact your time and how much time it takes when you want to involve the individuals that you serve and or other individuals or groups, like your funders, like community leaders, like your partner organizations, like donors, so on and so forth. So this is where you want to just think about that. And we're going to do a deeper dive into that too. We also put in here on page 66, just a little kind of checklist of some decisions that you might have to make as it relates to strategic planning. And again, this is complementary to page 62 and 65. So again, just giving you different ways to think about how to prepare to plan. We also want to share with you, and we're going to put this, I think Leslie or Rebecca will put this in the chat. It's titled Useful Documents. And so we'll put that in the chat for you, and then we'll also show it on the screen here. It's titled Useful Documents. This is one of my, Lisa, this is one of my favorite handouts. It's one of my favorite. And, you know, oftentimes when we talk about strategic planning, we are suggesting, highly recommending that we go out and we get feedback and we get information from individuals, stakeholder groups, people we serve, and so on. But quite often we have within our nonprofit documents that already exist. And these documents can help inform us as to the context, right? As to the context of kind of where we are internally in terms of documents and information that we have. So in this preparing to plan, and I'm probably speaking, for the most part, I'm speaking directly to our executive directors and presidents and CEOs, because we are a part of the leadership of the strategic planning process, and we are also a resource to the board. And so these documents are typically within the nonprofit. And so as a executive director or CEO, we probably know where these documents are. But in getting ready to plan and getting grounded, this is information that is worth reviewing, just to begin to kind of help you think about what questions are we going to answer, do we need to answer, and what is the purpose of this plan? Why are we doing this plan? This information can inform us, right? So we've divided this into 4 categories. It should be in the chat. Did we put the link to this document in the chat? I will pause here. And I always recommend if you've got your camera by on your phone, you can kind of quickly
Go back
take
to the
a photo.
checklist, yeah.
Yeah, go back to the checklist, but put the link to the checklist in the chat. Now, again, as we think about this, there are some useful documents, and we've divided it into about 5 different categories. There's documentation that's related to the mission and the overall purpose of your nonprofit. There are financial documents that we could review. There are fundraising documents that we can also review. And in looking at the mission-related documents, we're talking about your mission and vision statements. We're also talking about if you already have a strategic plan in place, or even if it's a plan that has expired, it can definitely inform you in terms of how to move forward. The other pieces of information, there may already be a needs assessment that was conducted by maybe your local United Way. There may be a needs assessment or asset map that was conducted by the city or town that you're a part of, or the county. You can gather quite a bit of information about your programs and the clients that you're serving through your programs. So there's information that can help you to get grounded in the mission and the vision and the purpose of the nonprofit. And so this is an inventory kind of checklist that you can kind of go through to see whether or not you have this material. We coupled the fundraising items with financials. So any kind of fundraising materials you have, any plans that you might have on file of any kind of, any way that your organization has documented how you do fundraising, budgets and budget reports, audits, financial reports. And if you have like a document or a manual that kind of highlights the internal controls of your finances and how they're managed. If you have an org chart, if you have any newsletters or any kind of communication that helps us to understand your organization better. If there is any information about how you recruit volunteers, all this information helps us to begin to think about our nonprofit. Governance documents, your bylaws, any minutes, who's been on your board, any kind of evaluations that your board has done as it relates to who it is and who they are. These are all very useful documents. Now, keep in mind, we're in startup and preparing the plan. That's where we are in the process. We haven't gotten to, which we will, we haven't gotten to or arrived yet in our steps. But we don't want to move through this too quickly, because all of what we're talking about here and all that we've highlighted gets you ready to actually map out your course of action for for creating a strategic plan and participating and being engaged in the process. So all of these things are can help you do that. So what we want to do at this point, I hope was everybody able to retrieve this document? And we can go back to gallery view now. Was everybody able to retrieve this document? Yes, 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 yes. Good, 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 good. Yes, okay. So what we want to do at this particular point, I have shared with you 100 pages of, no, excuse me. I've shared with you several pieces of information. Keep in mind, it's two parts though. Startup and preparing the plan. That's where we are right now. And so what we would like for you to do, we're going to go into breakouts. And team, we're going to do a 10-minute breakout. I think we can do that. It's 11:02. You're going to go into breakouts and you're going to share in your breakout session all of the information we shared. We want you to discuss the usefulness of the information that we've shared so far. So in your breakout, you're going to discuss the usefulness of what we've shared with you so far. And if you're in your workbook, you're page 57 to 67. That's where, so you've got about 10 pieces of information. Now, there are 3 or 4 of those pieces of information that I identified as being linked to each other. So those documents are connected. And as you're kind of sharing with your colleagues, you'll see that. So team, if we could go into breakouts, and again, your question or what you're doing is you are discussing the usefulness of the information that you have shared so far. And then we're going to come back and do some hands-on work.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Palmer. I'll go ahead and open up the rooms. We'll see you back here in 10 minutes.
And how many of you were able to stay on point with the discussion around how useful is the material that we've covered so far? Were you able to stay the course, or did your conversation go in some other directions? If just kind of 1 or 2 of you could kind of give me some insight.
I think my conversation steered a little differently. And it kind of went back to something you referenced earlier about the capacity assessment. I think that would have been helpful to have that. We are going through a strategic plan process with our organization. Our current one has expired. But having that to really know, to assess the climate of, are we ready for a strategic plan? Because being in it and doing some focus groups and interviews with community stakeholders, internal employees and staff, I feel like we're not ready for a strategic plan with some of the things that have come out of there. So it would have been nice to have that, I think, going into it. So then therefore we could focus on what we need to focus on. If morale is not working, amongst staff members, our funders, the programs we fund, even bringing in some of our board members, then we need to put that on hold before we move forward with the plan. So I do think I steered in a different direction in our conversation.
I think we have
Paola?
yeah.
Paola, you can unmute. I see your hand.
Gracias. Sí, tengo una pregunta. En nuestro caso, nosotros somos una organización de noticias bajo el modelo sin fines de lucro. Nuestro producto son las noticias, es la información. La información cambia, es constante, y la comunidad a la que servimos es una comunidad que cambia todos los días, igual que sus necesidades de información. Bajo esto, ¿cuál es la recomendación? ¿Cada cuánto debemos hacer un plan estratégico? ¿Cada cuánto lo podemos revisar y reacomodar a las circunstancias? Gracias.
We used to have, before COVID, we used to kind of have like a pinpointed kind of notion of doing 5-year plans and 10-year plans. And we've stepped away from that as a result of COVID, because all of those plans that were in play when COVID hit it didn't even matter because we had to do things so differently. So it's up to your nonprofit as to how long your strategic plan lasts. We were having a little bit of a conversation prior to signing on this morning, and our president and CEO of the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits, Jean Tedro, was sharing with us in terms of view, in terms of thinking about a strategic plan being this kind of guide, and then you build work plans to go with that strategic plan. So the work plans are the how, and that those work plans can be modified and adjusted. So I don't have a kind of true kind of notion of how long plans are. I'll tell you the plans that I've been helping nonprofits with have been at a 3-year mark. And some of them, I think I had one in this past year that did their plan for 2 years. So it really is at the discretion of your nonprofit. And the updating is continuous. It's ongoing. We should be updating our plans as we go along. The plan that Andre shared with you, there was a section in that plan, items that I thought was kind of neat. And it was, I think it was outcomes from the previous year for that goal, because keep in mind, that plan was updated. And so the priorities probably for the most part were from the previous plan, right? And so when in the update, they put a list for every priority. They put a list of outcomes for that year. I forget how it was phrased. I was looking back through my notes. Outcomes as of 2021. That was a section that they had in there. So to your point about, well, how often should we do it? How often should we review it? I would suggest at your board meetings and at your staff meetings that it's an agenda item where you're giving updates every so often on how you're progressing. Because in that way, your staff is in the loop, and also your board is in the loop in terms of keeping up. So
Yeah.
that's what I would say. I'm sorry, Lisa.
Just
go
to
ahead.
add to that, Dr. Palmer, I was just going to suggest how we do, well, we've just started instituting this at the center, that in order for us to, we have a 5-year plan, I believe. So what I'll do, I'll review them. What I've started to do is review them at our annual reviews with our staff, because each staff is responsible for a piece of that strategic plan, each department, if that's what you have. And so I make sure I'm sitting down with the staff to say, okay, let's look back at our strategic plan, because we can make all these other goals annually for the department that are not even on the strategic plan, right? But we want to make sure that we still incorporate the strategic plan in our departmental goals. So I look at it at least once a year with my staff to make sure that we're all on the same page. So that's just another suggestion of maybe a how often or how to.
And so again, I want to move on to more content. Thank you for your question, and thank you all for sharing. I know that sometimes when we go into discussion and we have a focal point, sometimes things go in a different direction. Our purpose for that breakout was for you to kind of sit with what we had shared with you so far, and for you to kind of get grounded in that a little bit within the time that we have. And so now we're moving from startup, right? That was at the top. Preparing the plan, that was the second part. Now we're going to share with you what you have in your workbook related to needs assessments and asset mapping. We're not going to do a needs assessment in this workshop. We're not going to do a asset map. But what we do want to do is to help you to understand why both of these activities, I'll call them, are salient in the context of doing a strategic plan. Now, again, you may not have the capacity to do a needs assessment as it relates to your nonprofit and the programs that you provide. And it's important to make a note when we're doing a needs assessment and when we're doing asset mapping. What we are doing is we are learning more about the context of the geographic area, because typically you have a reach when you're doing a needs assessment. We're learning more about the context in terms of need as it relates to that after school program, and in terms of assets as it relates to delivering that after school program. So that's really what you're trying to capture when you decide that you are going to do a needs assessment and that you're going to do asset mapping. So for definition purposes, if you look at page 68, and team, you might have to help me make sure I get these pages right with the English and Spanish. Page 68 is English, page 69 is Spanish. So we're looking at the purpose of a needs assessment and what a needs assessment is. Again, the city, the town, the county, oftentimes they are doing needs assessment oriented research, because they are trying to align what they do with what the needs are in your community. And so this needs assessment, if you look at page 68 and 69, we're trying to identify what the concerns are, what the strengths are of the community, and we're trying to determine the needs. You are reviewing needs assessment data type information to help you to better understand the need of the populations that you are serving. It is directly related to the programs and services that you're delivering, the needs assessment. If you look at the bottom of page 68 and 69, it helps us to determine in some ways the direction that we might need to take, or the path we need to take as it relates to our strategic planning process. And it is important to understand the needs of the community. And I typically suggest that we look at need related to the programs and services that you offer. And so you're trying to determine the extent of that need or the shape of that need. And you're also beginning to try to think about if this is a plan, if you've had plans before, you're also trying to look to see what kind of impact or outcomes have you achieved as it relates to the previous one. But the needs assessment is about programs and services. It's about the programs and services that you deliver. Now, an element of that also is related to the partners and the other entities in your community that might be doing the same work. So you might also be looking at the vulnerability of either your nonprofit, right? Or others that are in your community that are partnered with you or that are assisting you. We know as a result of COVID, we have nonprofits that are closing, that are no longer in existence. And some of our programs were relying on them. And so, it's important to try to keep up with that need. If you go with me to page 82 and 83, this is the asset mapping. So here we're talking about looking at assets here. And thinking about that. So it's the same principle. The difference here is we're trying to identify resources that will accompany the work that we're doing and that will help support our mission and vision. So we're looking for assets in the community. So if we have this after school program, we're looking for other partner organizations that might be able to support some of the work that we're doing. So let's say if we're at a YMCA and we have a summer camp, then we're taking field trips. Well, some of our field trips are to other nonprofits like the museum or our arts space or something like that. And so we're looking at the assets that might be in our community to support our programs and services. So that's what we mean by that. Now, how do we do that? If you look at page 71, and I'm just going to tell you what you have here, 71 through 81 in English, I think, yes, 71 through 81 in English, and I think I'm going to be 70, maybe 72. You all will have to help me with these. Maybe it's 72 to 79 in Spanish. this is where we are looking at how you can go about methods that you can use to understand need and methods that you can use to understand assets or to better understand assets. And we've only highlighted a couple here. You've got focus group information in those pages. You've got survey, how to go about doing a survey, and you've got public forums. So we put 3 approaches to that. Again, we're not doing a needs assessment in this part of our work, and we're not doing an asset map, but we've provided you with some guidance on how to consider that. And I'm gonna ask the team to give you 2 links. One is the Community Needs Assessment Guide. That's gonna be a link that they're gonna provide. And then, so there's 2 for the needs assessment. You'll have two links there. And then you will have 1 link for the asset mapping. It's an asset mapping toolkit. So we've provided some additional resources for you to take a look at. Now, one of them, when you look at it, you might think, gosh, this is a little dated, but I kind of like it. So that's why I included it. But it's these are all very helpful tools. So you've got 2 sources for the needs assessment, and you've got 1 source for asset mapping. And I'm just going to pause there because that was a lot that I just shared, but we want you to kind of recognize that a needs assessment and asset mapping are important. Okay. So just want to make sure those links are there for you. And we're going to push through. We're going to just keep right on moving through our work. Now, we shared page 84 and 85 in Spanish, 84 in English. We shared this at the beginning of our work. We've highlighted here what we mean by capacity and what we mean by capacity assessment and what we mean by capacity building. And this is that 3rd contextual activity for us to assess capacity of our nonprofit. And so we're highlighting this again. So we've done startup. We have looked at preparing a plan, needs assessment, asset mapping. That's where we are in our journey today. Lisa, do you have any thoughts or anything you would like to share at this point? That anything come to mind for you?
I think when I was thinking back as you were describing the community assessment, I remember when we were doing one and we brought the community in and you probably know this already, I'm sure you do. You know, when we ask, what are your needs? We got a whole list or 2 boards full of ideas, and we had to figure out a way how to narrow it down by taking some votes within the room. Or what are the community's top 3 areas that you'd like for us to work on? Because again, the most important thing I can say, do not go into the community giving them what you think they may need, coming from your perspective. It has to come from the community's perspective in terms of what the community needs. But otherwise, I think you've touched on everything that was in high level, Dr. Palmer.
Okay, thank you. So in terms of kind of where we are, and if you took a picture of that one slide where we had those 100 items we were going to cover today. I'm going back to mine. We are about almost halfway of that list, I believe. So in terms of just kind of thinking about where we are. So we start up preparing a plan, the needs assessment and asset mapping, mission and vision. What I want to say here is, as a part of the strategic planning process, it's a good time to revisit the mission and the vision, to make any edits or make any changes or adjustments. And here's the thing. The editing and adjusting when it comes to the mission, the vision, core values, principles for practice, whatever those elements of helping us to understand the essence of your nonprofit. This is a good time to revisit those in the strategic planning process. And so basically what we did here in your workbook on page 85, 86, and I'm thinking that's going to be 87, 88 in Spanish, I believe. Don't want to get us on the wrong track here. Yeah, 86 and 87. So this is a good time for you to edit your mission and vision. And this can be done a lot of different ways. You could do focus groups with your staff to talk about the mission, ask them what they think about it. You could also do this with your board, ask them what they think about the mission and vision. Is it a time to make edits? Now, the note you want to make, if you decide to make edits to your mission and vision, I'll go ahead and tell you it is time consuming. So be prepared for it to take time. The board has a perspective, the staff has a perspective, and any of those other stakeholders you invite into the dialogue and the conversation and the discussion, they have a perspective. And so that's a process in and of itself. So if you are wanting to make adjustments to your mission and vision, know that that's going to take time. Moving into our goals, well, let me back up. I don't want to move too quickly. Are any of you, I know I heard a couple a few minutes ago, are any of you in the process of making edits to your mission vision? Give me a thumbs up or use your reaction or put it in the chat. I think I caught some of it a while back this morning, but are you kind of, so you already know that this can, everybody has an opinion and everybody's opinion is taken into consideration. So it definitely, it can definitely take time in terms of agreeing. The word smithing, yes, language matters, and some people are real stuck on language. So, you know, you have to, you gotta have some patience when you're trying to rework and make edits to your mission and vision. But that is something that you can do. It adds time to the timeline, though. It does add time because you definitely don't want to rush through that. So we are now looking at goal setting and objectives. And we're going to put pen to paper with this. So, and we're going to be referring to specifically items in your workbook. And we also have some documents that we're going to be putting in the chat. So just know there's a little bit of movement for that. A little bit of movement. Yes, it is a good time for a facilitator if you revisit the mission and vision. I would agree. I would certainly agree there. If you need to stand up and take a stretch break, this is a good time to do it because we're getting ready to, we're gonna do a little, we're gonna dig deep with the goals, the action steps, and the outcomes, and then we're gonna take a break. But this is a good time to stand up, stretch, turn your video off real quick. You know, yeah, this is a time that you, I would say do that. I'm gonna keep moving us along, but you know, feel free. We are a little over half, Lisa, with our journey this morning. But it's all good. We're going to work our way through all of this important information. We are going to work our way through. Okay. Goals, action steps, and outcomes. on page 87 and page 88 in Spanish, we are wanting to kind of spend some time focused on the goals, the action steps, and the outcomes. And on this particular page, we have outlined what all three of these are. And thinking about goals, I always consider the goals in a plan are the what we're going to do. The action steps are how we're going to do, how we're going to go about accomplishing those goals. And the outcomes is what we want to achieve. So the outcomes could be related to impact, yes, but it could also be related to some specific outputs that we want to see. And so we're going to do some practicing of writing goals, action steps, and outcomes as a part of our work, today. What we have included in your packet is a worksheet. I'm going to take you all the way there, which is on page 91. That's where we want you to go, page 91. And this is your, this will be your worksheet, and you're going to write a sample goal. You're going to write an example of a goal for your nonprofit that might be put into a strategic plan. And we're going to give you samples. That's where the word sample comes from. I was getting a little ahead of myself. So we have some samples for you to take a look at. The first example that we have, follow with me, page 88. This is an example of a goal statement. This is the English 88, and then the English is 80. Am I right?
I think you
The
should be on 89 for English.
Okay.
You mean the
Okay.
Center Nonprofits goal example, right?
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay, great. So the goal example in English is on page 88. The action steps that
89.
go.
89.
Huh? Okay.
Go ahead. You keep going.
Okay, keep going. All right.
No, you-
I don't want to get the pages wrong because they got to refer to
In
them.
my book, it's 89, but in your
Okay.
book, for the English version for goals, it might be different in your book.
It's 88, and then the action steps is 89. Can you all
Okay.
give me a head nod? Am I right, English? Okay, I
Mhm.
see it. Okay. And then the outcome statement is 90. So page 90. So we have goals, a goal, we have action steps, and we have outcome statement. And so typically in a strategic plan, and we saw this in the YMCA example that Andre shared with us, typically you will see the goal highlighted with action steps. Now, some nonprofits use the term objectives. Some use that term. And then some nonprofits might use terminology like strategic direction or directives, or, it depends, but it means action steps. It's the how. And then we have an outcome statement to go along with that goal. So they go together. They're like one family, and each supports the other. The goal statement is the what, the action steps are the how, and the outcome statement is the why. Make sense? So for every goal, we have a set of actions that we're going to take. And we have the outcome, like the primary outcome that we're going to focus on. So we definitely want to make sure that you have these pieces of information in any strategic plan. This information is the heart of a strategic plan. It's the heart of it. It is all the other information helps us to understand the nonprofit better and all of that, the process that we use and all. But this is where we build the action plans, right? To do the work. This is where the work, this informs the work that we're going to be doing over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, however long it is that you're nonprofit is going to do that. So I was asked to repeat it. So primarily, the goals are the what, the action steps are the how, and the outcome statement is the why. So the what, the how, and the why. I use that kind of practical language to kind of help me to know what I'm building. And we put an example, it's across 3 pages, and we use the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits as an example. We have our goal for the North Carolina Center. We have the action steps to go with that goal. And we also have the outcome statement to go with that goal. Now we're going to give you some additional info, okay? We're going to give you, if you look at page 91, that's a worksheet for you, right? We're going to give you 2 examples with this already filled out. We're going to give you 1 example that's related to a program. So it's a goal, but it's program oriented. And we're going to give you another example of this worksheet completed that's related to the nonprofit as an organization. Okay. And if we could pull up the programs one first on the screen. And let me grab my. So we've completed this worksheet for you with a program, goal, action steps, and outcome statement, and a nonprofit, like focusing on the management of the nonprofit. So here's the program one. So the goal statement is by December 2020, the Guilford County Resource and Referral Center will implement the Swim for Life program to teach school-age children how to swim by providing swimming lessons to students at New England Academy. Okay, so this is our goal statement. And one thing about our goal statement is that we want it to be very specific. We want it to be measurable. We want to make sure that it's realistic. And we also want to make sure that there's a time element included. That's that little word SMART up there. That's where that's a little guideline that we want to follow. And most of the time when you read a goal statement or action steps or outcome statements even, they start with the action word. So notice we've got action words, we want it to be SMART, and so here's our goal. And then we've got our action steps. So that's the how. How are we going to achieve this goal? Once we've achieved this goal, here is our outcome. We will report that at least 75% of students that were enrolled in the Swim for Life program, they will have learned to swim within 6 months, and they'll pass a basic swimming test. And what are we trying to ultimately accomplish? Reduce the number of swimming related accidents. So again, what are we doing? How are we doing it? And why are we doing it? Program. This is an example of a program goal, action steps, and outcome. Another type of goal might be related to your nonprofit as an organization. So we've crafted a sample nonprofit management goal, action step, and outcome. Remember our guidelines, action words, and it is a SMART goal, right? So our nonprofit management goal, the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits will create, develop, and establish a capacity building resource in collaboration with the nonprofit sector in High Point, including Archdale, Jamestown, and Trinity. This is our sample goal. And then our action steps are as follows. And then what is our outcome? Our outcome is that we will have a management model for building capacity, and we will have a permanent resource. And this resource will be able to provide support services to nonprofit organizations in that area. Now, we've also included a note here that we could have also included how the model and the resource will impact nonprofit organizations. But that's another element that we could have added. So again, we've completed 2 of these worksheets for you, a sample program goal and a sample nonprofit management goal. And what we're going to do now is we're going to have you practice completing a goal statement with action steps and an outcome statement. Remember the state the action. We've given you a helpful tool on page 92 to help with that. So in terms of thinking about that. So you're going to be completing an example, and you can choose if you want to do a program goal, or if you want to do a nonprofit management oriented goal. You have a few here to use as an example. Any questions? And team, we're going to stay in the gallery for this. So we're going to let you kind of work in the gallery space. And I'm going to try to gauge just by looking at everybody working, just to kind of see where you are. It is now 11:50. So, and again, we're not necessarily looking for perfection here, but we at least want you to get your thoughts kind of bulleted out in the worksheet that you were provided. So you are using the worksheet on page 91, and you have 3 examples. If you have questions, you can unmute yourself. I'm here. But we just want you to practice this. How's it going? Give me a thumbs up if it's going okay. I just want to check in. Okay. And as I mentioned before, this is the heart of any strategic plan, the what, the how, and the why. And of course, we have to add the who, right? Somebody's got to do all this work. I'm going to give us another minute on this. So again, you're writing notes, bullet points, just to kind of get your concept down in terms of what your goal is, how you're going to go about achieving this goal, and why it's important. What difference is it going to make in your community? Oftentimes, strategic plans will have about a half a dozen or more of goals in a plan. Sometimes less, but oftentimes that's where we land. Okay, we're going to keep building this plane, right? So we have worked our way through the startup, the preparing to plan. I gotta get over here to my notes so I don't leave anything out. Our startup, our preparing to plan, the needs assessment, asset mapping, mission, vision, goal setting, and action steps, or goal setting and objectives. So now what we want to do is what we call a SWOT analysis, SWOT, a SWOT analysis. And what we're identifying is, in relation to the goal and the action steps and the outcomes that you drafted, outcome statement that you drafted, now we want to do what's called a SWOT analysis, looking at that family of information, the goal statement, the action steps, and the outcome statement. So the SWOT analysis is, we're going to look at the strengths, right, that are present, be it as a result of the needs assessment or the asset map or the feedback from stakeholders. We're going to look at the strengths that we have, both internal and external, to our organization. We're going to look at the weaknesses. We're going to look at opportunities. And we're going to try to identify some threats, if any, in terms of us being able to work towards this goal, do these action steps, and actually see the outcome come to life. So in your workbook, we have what you need to do that. If you go to page 94 in English, and we go to page, 96 in English, and 97 in Spanish. Examples of the SWOT. Examples of the SWOT analysis. Did I get that right with the page numbers? You're looking for a page titled Examples of the SWOT. And it'll have strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats at the top. So you have some examples of what we mean by strengths, meaning any attributes of the organization that are helpful to achieve an objective, or attributes even in the community that might be helpful. Weaknesses are those attributes that might be harmful, that are part of our organization or in the community that might be harmful. And then we've got, what are some opportunities? What are some threats that we might, that are identifiable as it relates to trying to achieve these goals, action steps, and outcome statement. And so on page 95, you've got a image. It's 4 boxes, and it says SWOT analysis at the top, and then it's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It comes right after that page. And so what we want you to do is to fill in the worksheet page as it relates to this goal and set of action steps and outcomes. So you're going to fill in what the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are. Does that make sense to everybody? Everybody got it? So you're going to take that draft that you used for goals, action steps, and outcome statement, and you're going to identify strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And what we typically do in the process, in the strategic planning process, for every goal, we actually complete a SWOT analysis. Now, you very well could have a goal where the focus is the nonprofit, right, as a whole. That could very well be an element of your plan if you feel like you need that. But again, we want to practice. We just want to practice using these tools. So I'm going to give you some time to do that. And what we try to do in terms of the application of the SWOT analysis, we try to do it, facilitate it in a way that's real practical and hands-on, so that it doesn't seem like this big thing that is hard to accomplish. It's real practical in my mind anyway, when I facilitate this process, to have us really do the SWOT goal by goal by goal by goal. And then all of that information accompanies that. And what that does is that it informs
Testing. Is she frozen for everybody else too? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
As Dory says in the fish, keep on working, keep on working. She'll be back. Give her a minute.
Technology was a threat. It's right there on the page.
She's in Greensboro. I'm assuming the weather's okay in Greensboro.
Yeah, I'm in Greensboro. It's
Oh,
beautiful. Yeah.
oh, okay. So that's not the issue.
I don't know what happened.
There she is. I told him to keep on working.
Yep, just
on
keep working. That's right. I have no idea what happened. But so hopefully you've been able to kind of work through the SWOT. And again, the idea for us here is to present this in a real practical way. This can become real comprehensive depending upon your design and how you want to look at your strengths and weaknesses. But we facilitate it in alignment with the goals. So I want to pause here and just Lisa, get just a sense of where we all are with goals, action steps, outcome statement, SWOT analysis. Are we good? Are we thinking that we kind of have a good sense of kind of how this works?
Not seeing anything in the chat.
Okay.
I
Okay.
think everybody's still okay.
Okay, good.
Unless you ask them to do their favorite face emoji.
Yeah, let me do that. Thank you, Lisa.
No problem.
Can you all use your reaction? Give me some sense of where we are. Yeah, that's always helpful for me.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, April. I really appreciate that smiley face.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. All right, man. We have sawed this. Well, I probably shouldn't say saw a tree down because some people might not appreciate that. But
Look at Kim's emoji on the chat in Leslie's.
Oh my goodness.
They got bandages on their head. They got fingers in their mouth. Those are the real serious ones there.
Look, thank you for your honesty.
Yep.
Thank you so much for your honesty. So, wow, we have covered a lot of territory. We just have a couple of more things that we want to highlight for you that's in your workbook. So pulling it all together. Well, no, stop. Work plan. So once you have all of this information, you can create work plans for each of your goals. And so if you look at page 96 English, 97 Spanish. 96 English, 97 Spanish. This is an example of a work plan. This is what it could look like. This is a Word doc. This is, some of you might use Canva. Some of you might use some other platforms that you can create and build documents. But you see here, we've got our goal statement. We've got our outcome statement. We've got our how. We have our who and our when. So this is just an example of how you can pull all this information together. So if you had 10 goals, you would have one of these work plans for each one. And so this is how this works. Let's see. Moving on to just a few other nuggets that we want to add for you to think about. When you put your strategic plan together, like the actual document, and don't forget, we have a worksheet in here too for you, a blank worksheet for the work plan. We thought that would be helpful. When you go to page 98, we're going to write and implement the plan. Write and implement the plan. That's 98 in English, 99 in Spanish. We have to actually put pen to paper and come up with a layout and a format. We saw with the YMCA example, there was a particular format that they used. There's content that's going to be in that plan, the design of the plan. And now design, layout, and format, there's typically, the cost is gonna vary depending upon how you go about doing that. But once you have all of this information, then it's time to put it together and to create that actual plan that's gonna be disseminated either on your website, hard copy. You know, it's important to think about that. When you get to page 99, in English and 100 in Spanish, this is the monitoring and tracking. So if we could go to that slide, team, if we go to slide 23. So
Reginald has a quick question, Dr. Palmer.
Yes.
Are the work plans and an operational plan synonymous?
In essence, yes. The work plan operationalizes the actual strategic plan. So yes, you could phrase it that way. Is that, are there any other questions, Lisa? No?
You're good.
Okay. So monitoring and tracking, you're monitoring and tracking goal achievement. You're monitoring and tracking challenges. You're monitoring and tracking lessons learned, and you're monitoring and tracking success. And some might think that goal achievement and success are the same. And so goal achievement is achieving the goals that you have in that plan. You've literally achieved those goals. So you're trying to achieve that. Successes could come as a byproduct of that. So you may be experiencing successes along the way. And how do you define the successful implementation of a plan? I think I saw a question in the chat.
Yes. It says, do you have any examples of what an implementation plan looks like, plus monitoring, tracking progress? That's from Elaine.
Well, gosh, I mean,
I can elaborate really quick on this,
mhm.
just because, so our organization, we're like, we've gotten up into like finalizing the implementation pieces. And I think one thing that's been hard for us is like visualizing what does that look like. And I know also, or at least what I'm realizing is it's so catered to what your goals are and what activities you've kind of put in place. But I think what we're struggling with is like, where's the starting point, like what, and it's almost a formatting question too, of like, what's the most user-friendly, accessible format that can, that I almost feel like I'm asking about tools there. But that's been a tricky place to just start so that we can, keep going.
The way I have to answer that in the moment is we can share with you different formats and layouts. And all of the formats and layouts pretty much that I've developed for nonprofits, we've literally gone in and as the facilitator, right? We've gone in and looked at what kind of information do we have and what is the best layout for that information and what speaks to us. So there's that. But if you don't have a consultant or a facilitator, then you don't necessarily have that, I would just say, library, right, of ways that you can go about doing that. What I would also say is that keep it simple. It doesn't have to be as colorful and graphic designish, maybe, as you saw with the YMCA example. I mean, literally, and I saw this in the chat, I have created strategic plans using that very work plan template that you have in your workbook for your goals. We're going to share with you what the table of contents looks like. I think, Lisa, that'll help them to be able to kind of gauge how to structure it. But more than that, I think focus on the content. Like, what is it that you really want readers of this plan to understand? What do you want them to understand? And we're going to give you what you would put in the table of contents, meaning what would actually go in the plan. Your design and your layout and your format on a practical level is going to be kind of like what you see in your worksheet. That's on a very practical level. On a grander level, you would pay someone to come in and give you a design that fits what it is that you say is important to you after going through a series of questions. That's kind of my baseline response to that. And then if you actually wanted to kind of create the, and I would also encourage you to just Google strategic plans for nonprofit, do images, strategic plans for nonprofits, and begin to look and see what you might find. Now, you know, I'm a little bit of an academic for any academics that are in the space today. So Googling stuff isn't always my first go-to because some of that may not be as reliable, right, as other credible sources. But it is a place, at least, for you to get some imagery about that. If we could go to that CBR, that is the table of contents for a strategic plan. And then I'm going to come back to the last slide, and then we're going to close out. And thank you. Was it Elaine? Were you the person that shared? Thanks, Elaine, for sharing. It is very unique to your nonprofit. There is no cookie cutter way to craft your plan. I mean, the cookie cutter element of it is what we're about to show you in terms of the kind of information that you find in a strategic plan document. But it really does have a lot to do with kind of how you, what you think reads better for the people that you are going to be disseminating this plan to.
Yeah, I really appreciate your feedback, especially your advice on the keeping it simple, because I think that's I feel like I keep coming back to that throughout this process, because it's so easy to get caught up in the details and all the different components, but I think that was really helpful. So thank you.
Yeah, keep it simple and practical and work within your capacity. You know, work with this process within your capacity. The design and layout and format, distribution, working capacity of your nonprofit. The glitz and the glamour and the, you know, multicolor and all that stuff, it's great. But the content is what we really want people to get. It's the content. So in a plan, in a strategic plan, oftentimes the first thing you're going to see is a message from the executive director or the board chair. There's a summary of the methodology and how all of this came to be, a little bit of history about your organization, the process that you use, what you learned from the needs assessment, what you learned from asset mapping, and you might also include what you learned from your capacity assessment. Your mission, your vision, any value statements, principle statements, any of those kinds of things that you want to include. And then here is the heart of the plan: your goals, your action steps, and your outcomes. Now, something I've been adding to plans that I've worked on is future plans. So we're including like a kind of a final page that even starts to help us to think about beyond this plan. And then you can also include either a message from the executive director or the board chair at the end. And you kind of give both of those leaders an opportunity to have a say in what actually is going to be in the plan. So this is the content of the plan. And again, keep it simple, keep it practical. The length of the plan determines how much you want to incorporate from all of these, from like number 5, 6, 7, and 8. Your length of your plan is going to have a lot to do with what you're capturing there.
And maybe as a quick example, maybe we can show the centers.
Yeah.
If team, if you wouldn't mind, just to show even simpler visual picture of a strategic plan that the center worked on. Now we have revised this somewhat that we're about to show you, but it's the same general concept. Just give them a few minutes to get it up here. And you want to scroll up to the top. Thank you. So you see how we have it here? We pretty much just have it broken out by vision, mission, values, or you could put mission first, vision, values, however you choose to format that. And we chose that as our first visual there, and scroll down. Then we go into our strategic direction, and we've grouped them in areas of where our goals may lie in terms of things we want to accomplish. So we group them and then put those activities or those goals underneath our areas that we wanted to highlight. And we pretty much left this, and this is what's something that will go on our website, and what we have to accompany this is that 20-page document, planning document, that we'll have all our planning details are behind this, but we bring this forward so it's easy to read, it's simplistic. As you're reading this and going through it, we can easily make updates or say, oh, we didn't get to this, or let's go look at the details of how we said, oh, I forgot about this one. Let's go back to our details and see what we said we're going to do about it. So I just wanted to show you all, it can be just as simple as what you're looking at now in terms of seeing some of the larger sections broken down.
Did you show the first one again?
The first plan or the first page, which?
That's it.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I think you can go back to gallery. I think we're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the last part of the process is evaluating the plan and revising it. So if we could go to that slide, which is slide 24. Page 100 in English and page 101 in Spanish. So in terms of evaluation and revision, you want to create whatever timeline you're going to use to evaluate and or revise. Evaluation should be ongoing. I highly recommend, if you have a strategic plan that is active, that you have it on your agenda at your staff meetings, and you have it on your agenda at your board meetings. And that way you know that it stays in front of everyone. So you're giving updates on the previous information. You're giving updates on goal achievement, challenges, lessons learned, etc. And then you report out in those with both staff and the board, but you also might do some community report outs. It just depends on how you decide to do that. And, kind of be prepared to make presentations on your strategic plan in terms of giving updates. So that's important. Go back to the previous slide. So here you want to write these in on page 99. Write these in on page 99. We have an iteration of that in the image there, but goal achievement, challenges, lessons learned, and success. Give everybody time to do that. And then the next slide is that next page, which is evaluate and revise the plan. And here we're talking about a timeline for evaluating and revising. So if you're gonna edit it every 2 years, if you're gonna revisit the process every 2 years or every 3 years, however long it is that your plan is, the time frame of your plan, you want to do that there. And then the reporting, again, minimally, it should be in front of your staff and it should be in front of your board. And then how you're going to present that is important. Use Microsoft Word and Excel. Those are platforms that come with your Microsoft packages. And so, you know, you can definitely use that for that. And if we could go back to slide, I'm getting over there. Hold on a minute. Slide 5. Well, not slide 5. Hold on. Sorry. Go back to
So slide 12.
maybe Rebecca. Yes, that's it.
Okay.
12. Thank you. That's where I want to go. So here was our to-do list today. Startup, preparing to plan, needs assessment, asset mapping, mission and vision, goal setting and objectives, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, writing the plan, implementing the plan, monitoring and tracking progress, and then evaluation and revision. And we always capture your questions in each session. And so we heard you in the questions about format, layout, and so on and so forth. I think I have team. I actually think I have, it's an older one, but I think I have a strategic plan that was done in Word, but it has all of these elements to it, like a no budget strategic plan. And we can get highly sophisticated with strategic plans. I know our county school system here has it's like I don't know, like a Cadillac version of a strategic plan. It's got all the bells and whistles. It's automated. It sends out communications to people. I mean, it can get real fancy real quick, but I'll bring that one at the next week, and I'll just share that one. But it's done in Word, and it follows these guidelines. So I think that concludes my part of the session today. And I'm gonna turn it back over to the team to close us out.
Thank you, Dr. Palmer. Our quiz for you guys next week will be, can you all pinpoint which slide was Dr. Palmer's favorite slide? There were many. Let's see how many remember, right? As usual, hope you guys are, for taking in all this great information. Please take time to follow up on our someone said, because Scott says the last one. Follow up and complete our evaluation. Link is in the chat. Again, it's very important for us to get your feedback so we can make sure these webinars are delivered in an appropriate way for you. Our upcoming sessions next week will be on fundraising and financial management. And then our last one will come around to human resources and graduation, and you'll get more details. The graduation will be a lot of fun, and we'll give you more details on the process on how that will happen before that at our next session. So again, if you don't have any questions, we hope you have a great day. Any last minute thoughts or anything you want to say, please take 3 minutes to do so, because that's how long it stands between lunch and and you get Dr. Palmer answering your questions if you have any.
And we can go back to gallery view. We do have 3 minutes, so we'll stay here. And if someone has questions or any thoughts or comments, or if there's any way that we can be helpful, we'll stay right here.
And thank you again to our interpreters. They were great.
Yes, absolutely.
Resources. You're welcome, Carla. I think we're good.